Right, well, that is 4 o'clock. So while a few more people join, we'll just press on because obviously we've got kind of limited time on here. So basically, hi everyone. So my name is Richard Waterstone. I'm from the SERAS network, and I'm here to welcome you all to SERAS's first mini conference. This will be the first of 3 webinars leading up to our big summer conference in York next year. That I hope a lot of you will be able to attend. There's quite a lot about that on our website, so please do have a look, and I'm sure you'll find lots of information there. That's at seras.org.uk. Just to check that everything's working fine here. Can everyone hear me okay? Brilliant. Great stuff. Okay, well, let's press on then. So just a little bit of housekeeping to start. Kind of it's all the usual kind of stuff, really. All the usual norms apply. Your mics and cameras should be switched off automatically. Hopefully they are. If not, if you could please do so, that would be great. Just really to shut out kind of background noise when the panelists are presenting it in a moment. The chat will be open. You'll see it as it says on the welcome screen there. It's that little kind of circle that I'm sure you've seen loads of times before. Please do feel free to join in and post comments or ask questions as we go along. Each speaker will follow straight on from the one before, so there probably won't be time at the end of people's at the end of their presentations to ask questions then, but we have, as you'll see at the end of the session, we've got some time there to kind of open the debate up, and we really look forward to hearing your thoughts then. Another good reason to stay until the end of the session is that we'll be giving details about our kind of project co-funding pot that we can put up. We can put some money up to support public engagement initiatives such as hackathons or other interventions. We're looking for kind of genuinely innovative, impactful, scalable projects. Obviously, with COVID around, that, you know, they can be online, but as I'm sure we all really hope, that those will be in person, and that there will be lots of in-person events next year. We're basically, what we're also looking for out of these projects is to build a kind of a bank of resources that can be accessed by teachers, academics, industrialists, anyone really, as kind of next generation skills provision tools. I know that Tony is going to discuss the fund a bit more during his talk, and we can go into more details about it at the end. But to kind of, in short, we can put £500 to £2,000 as match funding into projects that support SERAS's aims to bring the best in education and skills provision for robotics. Without further ado, let's go over and just have a quick look at the panelists before we start. If we just, here we go, just changing the slide. So basically, here we are now in the kind of introduction to the conference. Tony's going to start any minute now, and he's going to kind of just really set the scene, talking about what SERAS has been doing over the last year or so, and how we've been addressing the kind of the skills gap and skills provision issues, and basically in preparing the UK for the workplace of 2030. That will be followed by Dave Gibbs from STEM Learning, who's going to have a really kind of good look at the school curriculum, really, and as it is now, and just really have a look at kind of what opportunities there are for preparing our students for the future of work with digital skills in the curriculum as it is now. And then that will be followed then at 4:35 by Dr. Patricia Charlton from the Open University and the Institute of Coding, who's going to discuss her upcoming Inspire project. That's a really interesting project that we can't wait to hear more about, and how best basically to integrate 4IR technologies into the curriculum. And following that, we'll have time for a debate, and then right at the end, if any of you would like to stay to the end of the session, if you're interested, we can give you a bit more information then about the project funding pot we have. Just finally, just to let you know, this session is being recorded, and so it will be kind of accessible to you afterwards, if you'd like to rewatch it or get any further information. So without further ado, over to Tony.
Sorry about that, everybody. Just as I was about to start, my browser window crashed. So that's the way these things go. So I'm going to share my presentation. Hopefully that will work. Great. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry about the slightly false start. So I'm Tony Prescott. I'm the leader of the SERAS task group, which stands for Skills and Education in Robotics and Autonomous Systems. And we are a group that extends right across education in the UK and is funded by the UK RAS, that is the UK Robotics and Autonomous Systems Network, which is supported in turn by UKRI. And UK RAS has membership from most of the universities in the UK that are involved in robotics. So I think that's well over 20 universities behind UK RAS. And that's a project which I think is now in its 4th year and its 2nd round of funding. And its aim is really to promote robotics generally within the UK, and within that, SERAS is looking at the skills and education side. A little bit more about me. So I'm a professor of cognitive robotics at the University of Sheffield. I've been doing research in robotics for about 25 years. I also have a background in psychology. And I have a strong interest in human-robot interaction, and in the last 10 years also in robots in education, and the role of robots, not just in teaching people about coding, AI and robotics, but also perhaps more broadly in STEM education and robotics as an enabler for children to get more from education. So besides being a university professor, I've also have 2 startup companies that have links to the education sector. So just to disclose about those. So one of those companies, Consequential Robotics, produces the Miro robot, which some of you may have heard of, and the Miro Cloud robot education environment. And the other company, Cyberselves, which Richard is also in, is looking at trying to make robotics more accessible by making them much easier to program. So I want to quickly introduce what the SERAS network is trying to do, and I'll go through this quite quickly so that we can keep to time. So as I'm sure many of you know, the UK is somewhat behind our competitors at what is a critical time for our economy in the area of robotics and AI. We do have a lot of skills and a lot of expertise, particularly in universities, but our commercial sector, our manufacturing sector is behind. I think we're 23rd in the world in terms of the extent to which our manufacturing center is automated. And one of the key challenges is around skills, that there just isn't enough skill in industry to reach the automation levels that the 21st century will require. And these are just a few quotes from notable reports and reviews in the last 5 years, recognizing that skills is the key barrier, or certainly one of the key barriers for the UK economy being more successful. And I think this is recognized in government and at all levels of education. And the question is really what to do about it. How can we change things? And the position that we take in the SERAS network is that we need to look across all levels of education, starting with the very youngest. And glad to see Victoria, a primary school teacher here, and hopefully we want to start really with young kids, because that's the point they can become engaged with robotics and AI and STEM and decide they might want to have a life that involves those. And it's also an age at which kids can easily be put off or can get the impression that this isn't for them. So in Sheffield, we've been working with kids in local primary and secondary schools, and we see a lot of excitement and enjoyment around interacting with robots. And I know many of you will have that experience too through your own activities. So it's about promoting this, but not just school level. We're also looking at university level, obviously, where we're already involved in teaching. We're looking at apprenticeships with partners such as the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre in Sheffield. We're looking at retraining people after work. So a lot of the jobs in the future that will involve robotics will require people to work that are outside of education and have finished full-time education. So we need to think about retraining. And we also need to think about in-work training. And that's not just training for perhaps shop floor workers about how to use robots. It's also training across the spectrum, particularly management, helping them to understand how robotics could make a difference in their company. Personnel to understand how robots can be brought in to work alongside people, and with workers to help them understand how robots will hopefully help them to do their job or make their job more interesting and not in general replace their job. Clearly that's something we can talk about, but I think the role of robots has been shown so far to boost jobs growth rather than to destroy jobs. So within SERAS, these are our 6 aims. We want to understand the requirements for UK RAS training and education. We know a lot of our work is already being done. A lot of really great work is being done at lots of different levels, and we're in the business of surveying that, trying to understand what works well, what's been tried and didn't work, and what the gaps are, what hasn't been tried yet. And to do that, we're engaging across the education sector and with both the public and private sector, and also with third sector organisations, particularly those engaged around education, and quite a few of them are already linked in with our network. And we want to look for projects. I mean, SERAS is a 1-year project. It's been extended because of COVID by an extra 6 months, but we're looking to continue this beyond the end of this project, and we're looking to scope out new projects, develop new partnerships and collaborations, and find funding to support those. More broadly, we want to be part of this movement to inspire people to get involved in robotics, learn about it, see how it can be used in education, and to demystify to some extent these technologies, to show that everybody can get involved and have a go at them. We are also keen, obviously, to change the approach in the UK to teaching around robotics. In the long term, that might mean changing the curriculum. In the near term, it's about helping politicians and public bodies to know how to make interventions, to hopefully to inspire them to put their effort and their resource into the best places. So these are specific activities that we're doing within the network. I'll say a little bit more about most of these in a second. So we're creating a white paper, which we hope is going to be influential on public policy. We're running a national conference next July. As Richard said, this is a mini conference, which is one of the lead-ups to that, and we want to hear from you about whether you're interested in this conference and what you'd like to do at it. We're developing a program of, I would call them development, hackathon, and engagement activities, so very broad, including activities in UK Robotics Week, which is next summer, but up to and leading to that too. And we want to get other people to get really behind and involved in this, which is why we have funds we can use to support that. We will have a multimedia campaign to promote the findings of our task group and the white paper when that's ready. And we'll also be running some workshops to help develop those partnerships and develop long-term projects and future change. On the white paper, the UK RAS Network has published, I think, around a dozen white papers. If you go to their website, you'll be able to download these for free. Sheffield has been involved in several of these. I've put a couple of those on the slide here. So I led one on robotics in social care, which was published a couple of years back. That's been quite influential. It's been reported about in parliamentary proceedings, and people have referenced it in calling for new interventions using robots in healthcare. We had another one here shown here on the next robotics industrial revolution, and that is also influencing what we're doing now in our skills activity. The third thing you see here is a report that we did a couple of years ago. Richard, who introduced the session, was the lead author on this, and this was looking at the skills in education in robotics and AI as it stood 2 years ago. So the new white paper is going to build on some of the groundwork we did there, but its main aim is to try and capture the state of the art and best practice of teaching around robots, to set out a map for how this could change in the future, to provide policy recommendations, and then to take the white paper and use it to encourage new public and private initiatives to make this happen. So the national conference is going to be in July of next year. And so we very much hope it's going to be a face-to-face conference. And we're encouraged by progress towards COVID vaccines that make that look possible, that by July we can all get together in New York and have something like a regular conference, but this won't be an academic conference. It's intended to go right across education at all levels and industry. It will feature some academic contributions, but I think it will also feature short talks and presentations from people in industry. We're going to have panels. We're going to have an exhibition, hopefully with multiple companies and third sector organizations. And the goal is to really try to bring everybody together that could be important in bringing about the step change in robotic skills. And we hope this is going to be the first conference of its kind in the UK, but we hope it might lead to more in the future. Besides the UK RAS network, it's supported by the National STEM Centre, and we've got Dave Gibbs, who's going to present to us next, I think, who is going to talk about the National STEM Centre in New York and what they do. So they're very used to putting on conferences. So I expect that there'll be a great meeting for us that they will organise. We've also got the Turing Institute, which most of you will know of, which is the UK's Institute for Artificial Intelligence. And in fact, we've already got one of the co-directors of the Institute, Vijay Kumar, who is a robotics expert. He's one of the keynotes for the conference. We also have support from the Royal Academy of Engineering, who many of you will know, who are very keen on skills and education across engineering, but including in robotics and AI. And also the IET is willing to back this, and this is going to be support for promoting the conference, but we may also be able to, through various bodies and through our own funding, be able to support reducing the costs for attending the conferences for people who maybe don't have the resources in their organization to come to the meeting. So there will be bursaries, a bursary scheme that you can apply for to come to York. So the goal of SERAS is to build a community. I'll tell you in a minute who's already in it, but we want to grow the community and to support activities that are rooted in that community. We don't want to run all the activities ourselves. We're particularly interested in scalable innovations that can bring about new ways of training in robotics. So that could be a public engagement event. We've done a lot of those, but we're not just thinking about engagement. We're really thinking about people inventing and developing new ways of skills training and education. And this funding could support you to try those out, or even to do some further development. For example, if you wanted to run a hackathon to develop some teaching materials, or to modify some robots to make them more accessible for teaching. Or if you wanted to put on an exhibit or run an event to engage across a community to get them involved in using robots and thinking about robots. So we're looking for organizations at all levels. So this could be schools, universities, public sector organizations. I think commercial organizations can get involved as long as they have a partner who is public sector who would lead. This needs to be something that's probably broader than one institution. So running an after-school club wouldn't qualify, but getting together with a group of local schools and looking to develop new activities around robotics could be an activity that we'd be able to support. So if you want to get involved in this, you should join SERAS if you're not already a member. So Richard and I are leading the project, and you can contact us. Sorry, the email address is on the next page, but you can also contact Louise Caffrey, whose email address is on this page, who is providing administrative support. We also have a Slack group, if you use Slack, where we exchange information, and we will be using that more as we come closer to the conference and our other activities later in the year. Patricia Charlton, who's also on this call from the Open University and the Institute of Coding, is also very involved in leading SERAS, as is Dave Gibbs and various other people. So you can also contact them if you want to learn more about joining our community. These are some of the current partners. I don't think we've got everybody on here, but as you can see, we've got a significant number of universities already involved, and then some of the key non-profit organizations, some companies, but also would like to get a lot more engagement with education companies that are interested in robotics and AI. So Richard and I both mentioned the available support. It's about £8,000 over the course of the project. There may even be a bit more of that, depending on whether we use all our travel budget. We may be able to put some of that into some of these activities. We are supporting online activities because clearly up till at least Easter, it may be difficult, if not impossible, to do face-to-face activities. And online activities still come with some costs. So if you need help supporting that, please get in touch. And even if it doesn't cost anything, we can help you perhaps organize events and help provide content for events if you wanted to organize some kind of online event yourself. We're particularly interested in projects that have some kind of match funding so that we can make our resource go as far as possible. If you're in an institute like a university, there might be knowledge exchange funds that you could apply for to help support this, and we can help you put forward an application for those kinds of funds. And there is the address, info@seras.org.uk, if you want to get in touch. Okay, that was my presentation. So I think, do we have time for a couple of questions, Richard?
We're running slightly late, Tony. Maybe if we go over to Dave, if you're ready now, and then we could do some questions and open the debate up at the end. Okay,
well, I can also take questions in the chat, although please don't be distracted and not listen to Dave. But if you do have an immediate question, put it in the chat and I'll try and answer it there. Okay, thanks very much.
Hi, Dave, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name's Dave Gibbs. I'm the education lead for computing technology at STEM Learning. We're based at the National STEM Learning Centre up in York. We're very pleased to be hosting and being involved in the SERAS conference in summer and these events running up to it. The digital skills in general, and particularly around industry kind of 4.0, Industrial Revolution 4, very important to us and our many partners across government and third sector and the private sector. So it's something that's very close to our heart. I'm going to go through a presentation which it will skim the surface because of the nature of digital skills. Digital skills is a hugely complex and very well broad topic, really, and sometimes it's different aspects of digital skills are conflated a little bit, and sometimes it's better to separate them out. So some of the web of issues I've put up on the screen there, and really the focus in schools is around, in the short term, it's around the use of educational technology and it's linked to baseline digital skills. They're, of course, tied into issues of curriculum change and school accountability. They affect and are affected by career aspirations among young people and indeed among teachers, and the aspirations for specific digital skills, of which we'll talk a little bit more later, have ebbed and flowed in terms of school priorities over several years, and without going back too far into the past, there'll be a little bit of scene setting. So it's worth just to kind of separate out almost some of these issues, just a brief consideration of educational technology. I've worked in support of schools in what I guess used to be called cross-curricular ICT for a long time. And back in the day, if anybody's been involved in education for as long as I have, you may remember an organisation called Vector. And back in the early noughties, the UK was a leading light, really, in terms of the integration of ICT and learning technologies into schools. Those were the days, Ollie, absolutely right. I was involved in the City Learning Centre programme, and we took a lot of, not only were we helping teachers with their pedagogical approaches with technology, but we also tried to build the skill level in areas where traditionally social mobility through IT-related careers was quite low. But even back in 2003, Bechter were pointing out that actually the effective use of technologies within schools was having a positive impact on some attainment. And there was some benchmarking going on, and it seemed that maths particularly was positively benefited by the application of technology. And there was a lot done. There was a lot of use by teachers, but also the building of student skills in using technology within the curriculum. Of course, Bechter went in the bonfire of the Quangos. Did this country's leadership in EdTech suffer because of it? Not sure. Responsibility was shifted to the market. There is a booming market around educational technology in the UK. But that leadership, that thought leadership, has had to be taken up elsewhere. Now, moving to more recently, even though this is 2014, this quote comes from, but these conversations are still being had. It's fair to say that schools have become a lot more discerning in where and how they apply technology. And part of that is a reflection of the change in the curriculum, but part of it is a realization that technology is not a silver bullet, and that obviously how it's implemented in schools is much more important than the fact that it's just there. You know, technology in a classroom does not make for effective education. But the paradigm shift has really become a filter. So technology tends not to be applied in schools now unless it's prescribed in the curriculum as a means in itself. It tends only to be used where it's being proven to support achievement in different subjects. And the places where that's happened are relatively few. So as you'll see, there was quite a blanket approach to the use of technology, and that's definitely less so the case. There's some evidence that in science and maths that technology can help with actual learning of scientific concepts and knowledge, but elsewhere the point is less proven. It's a good job, really. Back when I ran the CLC, it wouldn't be uncommon to take a phone call from maybe a head teacher, or more likely somebody who worked under a head teacher, that said, we've bought 60, 70 iPads, Dave. What should we do with them? The kind of shininess approach has probably worn off a little bit, I think it's fair to say. So what's happened to the curriculum? Well, digital skills, as I say, we're kind of talking about baseline digital skills here, which you might define as, you know, the use of office software, the ability to surf the web, the ability to use communication tools and collaboration tools. And there's also the specific skills that might relate to future careers. And there's been change. Oh, that's done a slightly strange thing. Those grey boxes, which I've probably made the mistake of applying an effect in PowerPoint. There's several references from the 2007 national curriculum where specific uses of technology were pretty common. And that might have been CAD-CAM in design technology, where the curriculum, while it didn't state that these things had to be, they were positively encouraged to be used in the classroom. There was positive encouragement of ICT, GIS systems in geography. There was dynamic geometry, spreadsheets in maths. There was use of digital photography or video or podcasting in science. So there was a lot of experience of using technology in the learning process within schools. However, there's a fairly popular phrase being bandied around schools nowadays, which isn't a new one, but that memory is a residue of thought. And there was a realization that if a young person is thinking about making a podcast about a scientific concept, they're more likely to remember the podcasting process than they are remembering the actual scientific concept. And because schools are accountable for the content of a subject and teachers aren't responsible really for the widespread development of digital skills, then if there is something that endangers the development of knowledge, it's likely to be jettisoned. So we did have this across the board selection of control technologies and design technology, maybe electronic music. It was quite specific and very broad, to the point where young people probably had quite a broad experience of technology, but a relatively shallow one. I'm hoping this next slide displays slightly better. No, just still some grey boxes. I can promise you it's not been censored, it's just been displayed badly. 2013 national curriculum, it's fair to say it was a move to a knowledge-based curriculum. Skills have taken a bit of a backseat. Skills nowadays are seen as the application of knowledge and not particularly as an end to themselves in mainstream schools. And the specific skills that were everywhere in the previous curriculum have shrunk. And you will find them mentioned specifically in geography, where GIS systems are still used. You'll find them mentioned in design technology, where young people are supported to develop programmable components in their projects. Elsewhere, not really found apart from in the computing curriculum. The opportunities, obviously, the national curriculum is not a straitjacket, but it is often seen as the job of a school to deliver the national curriculum. So if it's not in the national curriculum, then it's possibly not going to be taught. So as we shifted from ICT to computing, there was a slight change in the way that the subject was seen. In fact, there was a fairly fundamental change, really. The ICT curriculum got some criticism back in the day for being a kind of Microsoft Office training program, which is a little bit unfair. I think that's taking the worst of teaching and using it to exemplify all of teaching, but it suffered anyway, and various people piled in, and the death of the ICT curriculum soon followed. We moved to a national curriculum for computing, which had a far bigger knowledge component, and the knowledge was applied, although subsequent changes to examinations mean that the application of skills like programming is somewhat under threat. Ollie, you're absolutely right that academies don't have to follow the national curriculum, but they would be hopefully asked about the equivalent of their curriculum. Some of the aims of the ICT curriculum were carried over. The idea was that young people still do create and use software, create digital products and use software. They solve problems, and they also added in creativity and competence as explicit aims of the curriculum. Whether they've become widespread remains to be seen. Where does digital skills feature in computing as it stands? Well, they're quite specific, and they're around computer science, really. There's the design and use of computational models and simulations. There is a need to develop multimedia products use a range of applications and combine them, create those digital artifacts, and of course the skill of using technology safely and responsibly is bound in there too. Of course, the risk of piling all this stuff only into computing is that the context becomes slightly lost. So if in a design technology lesson you were using robotics, or were creating a web resource, or in science using data logging and publishing the data, then the context is firmly embedded, and that flight path from school into employment seems a bit clearer. There's a danger that computing might end up narrowing that context, and in fact there does seem to be some impact on the number of students who are carrying on with computing and digital qualifications. Just as a bit of an overview of where how the curriculum works in schools, you can see computing as a collection of digital literacy, information technology and computer science is mandatory. It's a foundation subject all the way through to age 14. It should actually be a mandatory subject all the way through to 16, but it's been found that the vast majority of 14 to 16-year-olds do not access computing unless they've chosen computer science or a technical award, and the numbers of those in total, we're looking at maybe a quarter of all students. It might be less than that because many of the students who take GCSE computer science may be the same ones taking tech awards. So about 12% of all students opt for GCSE computer science, where they continue to develop programming skills and an understanding of computer hardware. Around 14% take these technical qualifications. When we get to A-level, we're looking at about 12,000, a touch over 12,000 students taking A-level computer science, which is about 1.6% of all of them, and about 11,000 took tech-level qualifications. So the pipeline narrows significantly heading into HE and FE. It's worth pointing out those students in the non-qualification bracket, those classes receive an average of 9 minutes per week of computing education in Key Stage 4, which clearly is not going to build a particularly strong skills base. There's also a kind of a diversity issue, really. So the broad base of digital skills is being narrowed because of the classic student in computer science is academically strong, mathematically able, they probably study triple science, they're probably affluent, and they're overwhelmingly likely to be male. So again, there's a danger of narrowing. You can see this is a group of young people who are otherwise high achievers, but are resistant to computing, and this is some data that's come from some Wellcome Trust research. Girls, as you can see in orange, are much more likely to be resistant to computing. Funnily enough, those with parents who are interested in science are quite likely to be uninterested in computing. Those who report that they've had a negative experience or have lacked encouragement in computing are obviously more easily put off. And students say that a teacher explanation, having a teacher who can explain things well, is really important. And computing has the lowest number of subject specialists of all the subjects other than citizenship. So having a teacher who can explain things well is a challenge. And it means that we've lost a lot of those students who report a lack of enjoyment. They say that computing isn't relevant to them. They say it's not creative enough. They're not given encouragement by their family or by their teachers. They report it doesn't feature in their career plans. They see it as not well represented in wider culture, and they don't see themselves represented in the workforce and in other students. And on a more concrete level, some schools just make the option quite difficult. The National Centre for Computing Education, of which I'm a part, and STEM Learning is the lead of the consortium for that, is working hard to change all of those things through teacher development and a host of other measures. Lots of action planning, consultancy with teachers, lots of resources, an entire curriculum there to try and make teaching and learning better. So in terms of readiness for the fourth industrial revolution, well, schools have always played catch up at every industrial revolution and every development of technology since, really. It's said, obviously, that schools are not skills training grounds, and that's absolutely fine. However, young people do need to be able to take their knowledge out of schools and adapt it and use it in the workplace. And there's definitely a place for skills development to do that. What's the environment going to look like? Well, you probably don't need telling. There's a huge amount of very rapid development of cutting edge technologies, which are already becoming embedded and will be a standard part of the workplace in the years 2030 and beyond. No surprises there. But what about the skills, and where do they come from? Apologies that that's not displayed quite as I was hoping it was going to do. Computing skills, coding, data literacy, big data, all these really important kind of hard skills, as well as lots of soft skills like resilience, adaptability. They're much needed. The question is, where in the curriculum do they come from, and what happens if young people aren't accessing that bit of the curriculum that gives those skills? There is reason to be hopeful. Ofsted have taken a much closer interest in the curriculum of late, and they want a curriculum that provides relevant skills and knowledge in a local context for as long as possible, including vocational and technical training for as many students as possible. So they will be leaning on schools to make sure this happens. And how can we collectively do something about this? Well, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but there are definitely some ideas there at policy level and at concrete local level, lots of which we will continue to work on, including obviously our main interest, which is in upskilling teachers. So questions and comments, thank you for keeping them flowing through. I will try and look through those as I hand over to Trish and answer them at the end. So thank you very much.
Dave, that was fascinating. That was brilliant. Trish, are you ready to go?
Yes, I'll just share my slides. Oh, it's gone into the infinity wheel.
I'm just going to say to everyone that we should be able to give you access to any of those slides. I think some of Dave's slides were really interesting there, and you might not get a chance to kind of get all the stuff off them. So I'm sure we could make them available to you afterwards. Sorry, Trish, over to you.
Yeah, I'm in the wheel of death. It's not letting me share, put it that way. It's taking too long, it can't load.
All right, I'll see if I can help.
If there was the questions for Dave or myself, we could take them now.
Sorry?
While we're waiting for that, but
yeah, you can take questions, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling back up through the chat window. Skilled teachers key, but possibly pay to other sectors draws them away. Absolutely, absolutely. It's why there's a shortage of maths teachers, because maths has been proven to be an A-level and a degree that gets you lots of money. Education is not the shortest path to lots of money. But we do see people in engineering and more widely who do come into education as a later career choice, and also people who volunteer to be STEM ambassadors and to keep their main career while also coming in and benefiting education. I'll stop talking now and hand over to Trish.
Thanks. I don't know who shared the slides.
So let me know when you want to change a slide.
I have control. Thanks, Richard. I have control to move the slides. It's all fine. Thanks. Oh, don't we all love technology? Doesn't it just work so beautifully? So I'm going to talk a little bit about a project we're going to be working on that starts in January called Inspire Project. Just before talking about that, I wanted to sort of reflect on some of the challenges that we face. So it was quite interesting what Dave was talking about, the curriculum and the challenges that have been faced in bringing computing and ICT and the engagement with that. And then we also know, and I've worked on lots of projects, as have many of us, where we've worked on extracurriculum activity. It was really interesting to hear from Melissa about the school in Sheffield that's teaching robotics in their hub now. I mean, that's amazing, that's brilliant. And that's really what we want. We want to be able to have that for everybody and make that accessible, and give those opportunities. And we all know from our own experiences that there's a lot of grassroots activities, lots of hack events, engagement events across the sectors. However, there's no mechanism currently to bring that all together. And as Dave was saying, schools are reluctant to take on board technology unless they really know, and it can be evidenced and demonstrated, how that's going to work in the classroom for them and how that can be supported. And it's interesting to see, because I'm sure Melissa has the story to tell about the school, about how they've been able to do that through training, encouragement, and bringing in the right kind of framework to have that happen. And that's really part of what we're trying to look at with Inspire through some small evaluation strategies with schools. But just before I go on to that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Institute of Coding, a project I've been working on over the last 3 years. And the Institute of Coding was looking at the digital skills gap across higher education for our learners and people in the workplace, and across data science, AI, cybersecurity, and generally digital skills. And it's quite interesting. It was quite interesting to hear Tony talking about the challenges in the sector and Dave about the challenges, and the chat that's come through, that's where people are saying about the sort of the gaps between what is needed, what's happening. And there's this interesting story around from the industry point of view, where their demand for skills, digital skills in the sector, and the education sector. And this gap is interesting because it tells us that there's a lack of understanding in some parts, whereas in others there's really good working relationships between industry and academia and schools. And when you look at the AI sector and the data science sector, and that's a lot related to my background, you see this sort of the industry asking for 101 or 1,001 skills. And that tells us something. It tells us that that sector and that part of that sector is still in its transformation phase. We're still transitioning, and it's unclear really what the skill sets are. And some of that, I think, then gets reflected back. Interesting, Dave was talking about the ICT curriculum and how it changed. So around about 2011 and 2012, when there was that shift, it was driven perhaps by people who weren't really looking at what was needed in the schools and how the schools work. And we see this happening with the data scientist jobs today, and AI, but that will normalize, and there will become those different avenues coming out through the sector and a better understanding and a better knowledge. But it doesn't mean that that's the way that has to be embedded into the curriculum or the way the teaching has to work. So there's some things to think about in the process, because sometimes there's tensions or things are asked of us that are not, there's a misunderstanding. So part of what we're looking at, we've talked about, is the fourth industrial revolution and the skill sets coming that's needed for this. And then there's this question, because I think Dave demonstrated really well in his presentation the complexities and the discussion that's happening in the chat, and there's this real sort of tension between what can we do in the curriculum, this curriculum that's already packed with quite a lot of demands that's set where there's it has to be in the curriculum for schools to really be able to utilize that. Then the skill sets, Dave said that we have the least computer science experts, so it's kind of it's a challenge. However, we understand that there's a need for society generally to have a set of digital skills that's going to help them. And Tony was talking about that, this broader engagement for society and inclusion, and how are we going to address that? What can we do? And we can't wait until it happens completely and then have a think about it. And we know that, but we're also faced with a number of challenges in there. So we've been having some discussions to think about what we might be able to do, and how we may be able to look at this problem. And this is where Inspire comes from, to create, inspire value creation through co-design. And here we're working with a set of schools to see how to address the growing digital divide, because that's the other problem that's taking place as well. We saw that over COVID, where a number of schools had children who just didn't have access to technology and couldn't join online, and yet we can deliver online. And so while that's going to create an even bigger divide as we go into this this next phase of development. So how can we do that? How can we bridge that divide, and to look at how to bring into the curriculum these different technologies? So we've been talking with some schools and an FE college about looking at the curriculum, and is there a way to embed across the curriculum where, as Dave pointed out, where it makes a difference, where it makes sense that technology, these tools, AI, Internet of Things, robotics, can come into the curriculum and add further skills, bring value, and for us, more social inclusion. We know it's a co-design process. There's no one place where one has all the skills. It has to be a process of shared understanding and shared support if we want to investigate this. So we know that that's part of the process. We need the stakeholders to come together to do that and to work collaboratively. And the other part of it that fits within the SERAS is this idea that we will share these resources globally. So what we find, we want to be able to share. So the Inspire is about a co-design, a participatory approach, where what we're going to do first of all is run some workshops together across with the core stakeholders, with the schools, industry, academia, and teachers. We're going to run from the January right the way through to July. We're targeting Year 9 age group as introductory. Now, Victoria, I know that you're coming from a school, but we're also interested to think about how does that also work with other age groups. And as Tony rightly pointed out, we have to start working, embedding this from an early phase so that it becomes intuitive and part of the way we think about problem solving. We see it as a co-design process, and we want to build an evidence-based approach. So what does that mean? That means working together to see what really can work and what doesn't work. It's a very small-scale pilot, but the idea is to look at the evidence and say, well, which parts of the curriculum can we bring together? What interdisciplinary can happen? It doesn't have to be across maths and computing. There's more, I suppose, within the STEM sector where we see often more common use of these technologies and what could benefit, but also looking more broadly. We're open to that. And to share the initial results at the SERAS conference in July, bringing the teachers and industry in to share how this worked, what has worked and what hasn't worked. So the pilot is to design and create and test together. And at the heart of this, it's to make learning visible and authentic to the learner. And I think we all know that authenticity to the learner is important. Dave was talking earlier about people who, young students who've disengaged with computer science and certain areas of STEM. And we know that when something is authentic, when we can see how that brings benefit, it has to be authentic to the learner, then the change happens and they will go to great lengths to be able to learn around that subject. And that comes back to that project-based learning, learning through making, learning within context. We also know that the learning won't just happen within, you know, that with all the same context or all the same skills. We come with different strengths and locally and in the environment. So that's what we're looking to do, to sort of see where that can go and understand what works, what might work for the curriculum, I should say, and what doesn't, and why we think that, so that we can build on that and build a more systematic approach. So I'm just going to finish off and reflecting back on some of the aspects of working on lots of different projects through creating and learning through co-design process. And it's interesting, things start, you know, these tools, they're human-made tools, and all about our designs, our thinking, and it starts with thinking about what we want, what change we want to make, and what difference we want to make. And I've worked with many students, across many schools, across many different organizations, and creating those, seeing that collaboration and students work together on projects and the engagement that can happen, it's very inspiring and it's very creative. And I hope this is what we can bring to Inspire to support SERAS on its mission to bring more into the skills in education together and the collaboration that's needed to do that. So thank you for listening, and I'm open for any questions if anyone wants to ask anything further about Inspire. So David, it's 5 o'clock.
That's great, thanks. If anyone, it would be great to kind of open the debate up generally. If anyone would like to join in, I think we've got Dave's here. I can see on the chat, and I think Tony's still here. Maybe I could just ask the first question then to Trish and Dave. Do you think that kind of bringing kind of back or kind of implementing project-based learning more in schools is a possibility or not?
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Richard, bringing back.
Whether project-based learning is something we should be looking harder at.
So, Dave, you wanted to say? Yeah, I was just going to say it's probably not flavour of the month at the moment. We've got policy direction, which is very, very much about knowledge and long-term recall. It's very focused on academic content. Unfortunately, there's a fair bit of research that says if PBL is done badly, then it can be quite harmful. However, the opportunity for projects really lies in extracurricular activity, and this is where a lot of the progress around skills and relevant technologies can really be made, I think. The curriculum does act as a bit of a straitjacket sometimes, yet if you're running STEM clubs or lunchtime clubs or weekend hackathons, that sort of thing, there are issues around participation which we need to solve. We need to get a bigger range of young people accessing these projects, but they are an opportunity to think across curriculum areas to have deeper projects and build skill.
Brilliant, thanks, Dave. If anyone else would like to put a question out there, put it in chat, and we can put it to the panel. So, I mean, one of the things I just wanted to follow on to what Dave said. So, in my experience in working in lots of within schools, within what you would call project and collaborative based learning, it had to be done in a very designed way, and it was done a mixture. So Dave, we did a mixture of things. We did hack events, and we did going into the classroom with the teachers, working with the students, but there was a lot of work that happened before and during and after to take them on that journey to make sure it was an effective journey. And it's a lot of work, and I think that's the thing, when it works well, it's a lot of work. People learn a lot from it.
And you're absolutely right. If you do that badly, it's like a PhD or any research dissertation type project. It's awful. You know, it's awful for everybody. So it has to be designed in a constructive way. Completely agree. Yeah, and absolutely. So Dave's saying about the exams there. So that's another challenge, is how do you test this? And I think one of the interesting things we've found, so a lot of schools now do at A level, they do something called the extended project. And a lot of universities are requesting that. They like that students do this research extended project because they feel it helps them prepare better for university. But it's not easy to do. So yeah. So anyway, I'm going to stop there. But I just wanted to add that bit in, Richard. Thank you.
Brilliant. Has anyone else got any questions?
I wondered if Ollie, if you would like to say something. You said that you had a lot to say about project-based learning. I have a strong feelings about project-based learning, is what you said.
I do, and the reason for this is when I was teaching, I went to the States, and I visited a school in Houston, which I think I've mentioned to some people here before, and this school was created around project-based learning. And the simple fact of the matter is that, I mean, American education systems don't have the highest reputation, but I would have employed pretty much any of those students that I saw in Houston over the majority of the students I've taught over many years in the UK. And this was primarily because of the skills they were learning through a purely PBL-based system of learning, which was designed very well, it was led very well, it was implemented very well. And because everything was done very well, the results were fantastic. The problem was that I was sent over there to see, right, how can we bring this into the UK school I was working at the time? And the answer to that question was, really, we can't, because we are so constrained by the exams. It just, the way they were doing things, which was phenomenal, just wouldn't work under the terminal exam-based system we have in the UK, which is a real shame, because actually, you know, these kids were doing incredible things, which was really exciting.
Sounds brilliant. I don't know if anyone else has got a question. I mean, I could ask another one, Tricia, about this kind of idea of really what we need to do is to be impactful, and especially with the white paper, and to make real kind of workable recommendations, and actually to kind of really be impactful with government policy. I noticed, you know, in your Inspire presentation, that there's a kind of a big part of it is actually building evidence, that really, you know, that what we have to do first is go back and actually build the evidence about this. Is that the case?
Yeah, so thanks, Richard. Yeah, so that's the idea, is we've got an evaluation framework, a co-design evaluation framework, and working with teachers. It's, as I say, it's a very small study, but to very practically go through this with the teachers to see where they feel that this could be embedded in the curriculum. And then when we run the activities, we will have to run them as extracurriculum activities, and in the short term, just because there isn't the time to sort of think about how it could be embedded, but then making that visible. And of course, as you and Tony mentioned, these projects that you're also public sort of sponsoring some projects that people can apply for some funds, is to bring these resources together and to share this experience and activity, to understand what works and how we can measure to a certain point. And that'd be a limited measure because it's in a short term, but it can seed some understanding of where it might be able to make a difference, and where we've had some difficulties and why that might be. And then to look for further funding so we can go forward, and to be systematic, because we can't, or I don't think we can, and if my understanding of what from what I understand about the curriculum, we can't add to the curriculum. We can't add another subject or to the curriculum, but we could embed into the curriculum and into them it's more interdisciplinary work. And there is a drive now, I believe, for a lot of schools to try and remove some of the silos between the subjects and create more interdisciplinary exchange of knowledge. And this is where these tools might help us as well. But it's something that we'll investigate over the next 6 months, and we'll bring it to the SERAS, and it will help. Obviously, it'll be part of the white paper that's done as well. Quite excited about it, but I'm sure I'm going to learn lots of things, and what I think is going to happen is not actually what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds great.
Richard, I was wondering if we should just quickly talk about the next mini conference and what we've got planned for it.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I'm trying to remember, actually. We've got some speakers lined up. Have we got a full program yet?
So February the 4th, we've got some interested parties. We're going to go down using the same format, basically. We feel, and unless any members of SERAS or anyone else really, could kind of suggest a better way to do it. But we think we might go for kind of 3 speakers, and basically on the idea of how, which is something we've obviously been covering quite a lot as well today, just kind of how relevant is the curriculum. And I think Trish had a really good way of putting it a while ago, was kind of, if teachers could take control, what would they do? How would they run things? And so we really want to kind of follow on this kind of the Inspire work that all should have started by then, I think, Trish, shouldn't it? By kind of the 4th of February, when our next mini conference is. And we just kind of really want to start kind of really coming down into just what can we do with the curriculum as it is at the moment. And obviously we should have something to report from whatever does happen in the kind of early Inspire activity. We have approached some people, and some people have approached us to speak on that panel. But if anyone would like to get involved or has got anything they'd particularly like discussed at it, or kind of any ideas around it, please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think, and also we are looking for ideas and suggestions for the conference. So there's still a lot of planning going into that, and we've got lots of ideas of what we'd like to see, but we also want to hear from other people, particularly people who think they might be interested to attend, but they're not sure what would, sort of flip them into thinking, oh, I definitely would like to be there. And also in terms of the support they might need, sort of how useful would it be to have a bursary? How much of an obstacle would it be? I think the fee for the conference might be around £150. Would that be a massive obstacle for people?
Absolutely, yeah, and that we can supply bursary funding, that would be very interesting to hear. As Tony was saying earlier as well, we'd love to get some more contributions for the white paper, and we'd be really delighted to hear from anyone who'd got something they'd like to contribute. I mean, I think Melissa, thanks so much for your information earlier about the Sheffield schools. I think that is really interesting, and really that our last paper was very much pointing out the dreadful position around the UK skills gap, really, and just how far behind lots of our competitors we are. But we really want to, in this one, actually to really kind of highlight really good things that are happening at the moment, and really try to generate some genuinely kind of workable, scalable recommendations that we feel that can have input, because they can really go forward. So I mean, and really at the moment we've done a lot of the kind of background work on it now, and we've started really kind of talking with manufacturers a lot. That's something else we're really keen to carry on doing as well, for their take on the skills gap and what really good skills provision might look like. But also we'd kind of really like to hear about any initiatives that you feel would be kind of really worth highlighting, and that really kind of show best practice in making robots more visible in education, but both in schools and in the workplace. As Tony was saying as well, just to remind you that we still have this match funding available for hackathons or other public engagement initiatives, and obviously the COVID last year kind of obviously kind of knocked this sideways, and and a lot of people might have had some plans but had to put them aside for the lockdowns and everything. But we really hope that we can do some in-person work next year, and please do get in touch. If I can just kind of move on quickly to the next slide here. Just to kind of go over that quickly again, and please do get in touch, and we can give you more information either through the website or through or by emailing. That basically we're looking at kind of hackathons, any inventions, and we can, as Tony was saying, we can really help you as well to design the events if you like. You know, we'd really like to get as much or as little involved as you'd like us to, and at the very least, thanks Rachel, really good to hear from you again. At the very least, you know, we can provide you with some finance towards them, but we'd obviously be delighted to help in any way we can. And as Tony was saying, we all kind of have quite a lot of experience among ourselves and on the team with hosting events and with doing public engagement work. So as Tony was saying, we've got kind of grants of 500 to 2,000 that we can offer people, and we're really just looking for kind of really interesting new ideas that don't necessarily have to be kind of even fully formed at the moment, really. But if you could just get in touch with us, you know, we'd be delighted to help. I'm not sure if Dave's still here, but he was very keen to say as well that on one of the STEM Learning kind of Enthuse projects, that if someone is already getting funding from that, you know, please don't think that disqualifies you in any way from the SERAS funding that we're offering here, and that, you know, we can definitely find ways to kind of top up Enthuse projects or other similar initiatives.
Yeah, Richard, just to add on that, so we've got a pro forma which you can get by emailing us. It isn't asking for a lot of detail. It won't take a long time to fill out. We will sort of be funding things on the as they come in. So there will be a committee that will look at this, so we can try and make this a transparent process. We're obviously going to want to fund as many projects as we can. So if you can match funding, that certainly helps, but it's not absolutely essential. And I would say, you know, if you get your application in soon, then there's a very good chance that we would be able to fund it. So please think about what you might be able to do. I think the key thing for us is think about creating something that's going to have some kind of legacy in terms of insight into how to boost robotics education and skills. So if it's just a one-off engagement sessions, not exactly what we're trying to do, but something which is trying out ideas, is definitely in the right ballpark.
And then not wanting to kind of terrify anyone too much, and it definitely kind of won't be an absolute deal breaker on it. But as you can see on the kind of last question that we've put there on the pro forma, that we'd really hope that as well you might want to kind of at the SERAS summer conference, is that, you know, if then you do go ahead with your activity, that you might tell us all a bit about it at the summer conference, and that would be great. Okay, are there any more questions? Okay, well, I think we're there then. Thanks so much for coming, everyone. We really appreciate it. We've really enjoyed doing the mini conference. We'll get details out on the website and to everyone about our second mini conference on February the 4th. And as we were saying earlier, please do send us kind of any ideas, or if you'd like to get involved and actually be a panelist on one, that would be brilliant. So thanks very much, and we'll see you in a couple of months. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Thanks, everyone. Have a good winter break. Bye.